Well, good afternoon. I'm excited to be here with you and share a few tips. But before we get started, let me start by asking you a question. How many of you had to plan an excellent event, but they were constrained by the budget? Okay, always. All right. So I guess budget is always going to be one of those things that we have to be aware of. Well, today my goal is to talk about high value event production without breaking the bank. And we'll explore several practical tips on how we can do that in an affordable and effective manner. How many of you have seen this come about, maybe on LinkedIn or some event professional group, where this is your event expectation, but then your event budget is the big gulp, right? You have the Stanley Cup. The Stanley Cup is all big, bold, beautiful, but then when it comes to the expectation of what you can do, especially as far as AV budget is concerned, there's a bit of discrepancy. So I guess the question is, how can we still produce events that deliver on the promise without breaking the bank and losing that cool factor that the Stanley Cup has? So today, my talk will really center around practical AV production tips with a special emphasis on how you can optimize budget and make it work for you. I'm going to tap into a few budget considerations and ways in which you can enhance the value of your events and of your production, ultimately creating the type of event that your clients expect from you. So let's get started. But before we do that, how many of you have one of those crazy stories that from your event days that you're like, I don't know if I should share this? Okay, so I'm gonna start with that. Just for a bit of fun, we're gonna take you back into my early days in AV productions. And this is when analog was the keyword. Analog everything, analog mixers, and analog speakers, video switchers, lighting, parkans. The microphones were still operating in the prohibited 700 megahertz range, and everything was very much analog. Now, I was just fresh out of school and I was tasked with my first big job, and that was to deliver sound for a wedding. And I was really pumped for it, but really what I had was a lot of enthusiasm and very basic gear. Little did I know that those wireless mics that I was sent out with are going to be my biggest enemy, but also they're going to give me a run for my money. So the ceremony was held in this beautiful place, and that honestly didn't really quite matter, because the moment we started the ceremony and we realized that those RF demons were against us, every pop and crackle of the microphone that the officiant was holding was a very stark reminder that in the world of AV, sometimes your bigger challenges are invisible, but really the lessons are crystal clear. Those are the days when I really went through a lot of trial by fire and I learned my lessons. The good news is that 20-something years later, I have emerged unscattered and really for what it is to have excellent gear, excellent labor, and excellent event production at your events. I'm someone that I'm recognized as a woman in AV. I advocate for more women in AV, and I'm proud to have seen how much our industry has changed for the last 2 decades, which is in a good way. So with that, let me introduce myself. My name is Anca Platon Trifan. I own Trifan Events, which is a woman-owned event production and technology agency that is really known for its fresh ideas. I'm also the host of Events Demystify podcast and the founder of 2 communities, 𝗖𝗵𝗽𝗀𝗻𝗄 and Women Behind the Scenes in Event Technology and Production. Over the last 20 years, I have been awarded several awards, but really what I'm most proud of, the fact that those communities are growing, and the framework upon which Trifan Events is founded is built on 4 core values, and those are engagement, experience, empathy, and evolution. And that's what we like to call the Fit for Events framework. This framework is what I look at it as taking a holistic approach to event management, blending cutting-edge AV production with innovative AI technology, which we have heard a lot in the last 18 months, engaging our audiences, but also empowering our behind-the-scenes teams. And we do that through the use of mental and physical fitness embedded into our agendas, into our programs, healthy meal choices for our audiences, as well as for our behind-the-scenes teams, and also a high-value, high-end production for AV, but also integrating AI in our processes and our workflows to make us effective and productive. And now, I would actually love to hear from you. What do you think when you hear value as it relates to AV production? And there's a QR code on the screen. If you can point your phone at it, that would be great. And I'm going to get your answers in. And while you do that, you can also text or just go to the web address that's listed up there. And then words in there to describe what high-value AV production means for you. I'm going to give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about today. And my goal is, again, like I said, to go into some practical and tactical budgeting opportunities and tips to maximize your event's impact while also minimizing cost. We'll unveil the planner's Bill of Rights. There's such a thing when it comes to AV. And then we're also going to wrap up with a few crucial elements of high-value AV production and some resources. And now to your question. Now I asked exactly the same question to an audience earlier, and this is what they had to say. And I'm curious now what you had to say, because we have that poll running. So let's see. Okay, this is mine. Okay. Value, peace of mind, I assume. Quantity, dependable, efficient, affordable, partner. Awesome. Well, you can still put in your answers. I'm going to leave that on the screen there while I'm moving on here. But you can see that a lot of the answers are actually not that different. Quality comes to mind, and that's exciting, because I'm going to give you my definition of what I think high-value AV event production means. And to me, it's all about a partnership that provides that quality, that brings peace of mind, trust, flawless execution, while also delivering maximum value, both in terms of seamless experience that it provides and the impact that it has on the audience, while it's aligning the event's vision and mission to the budget. And talking about budget, in AV production, high value is deeply connected to smart budget management and consideration. So before we look at that in more detail, let me ask you another question, because we talked a little bit about AI integrations as well. How many of you use ChatGPT 4? This is the pro version. Okay, I see a few hands. Good, because you're going to use it some more, because now there is a tool that's been created for AV production. This is a custom GPT that really tackles everything that has to do with AV production, smart budgeting. It's leveraging a data set of over 20 years of knowledge, as well as strategic planning, budgeting management tactics. It's an expertise that goes beyond just AV. It goes into planning, strategic planning, emphasizing the importance of storytelling, mental and physical fitness. Again, I'm strong on that, as well as audience engagement and creation of memorable experiences for our audience that really resonate with our audiences way after the event concludes. Now, why is this important that you want to use it? I give the example of like, if I want to go and buy makeup for myself, I don't go to a grocery store. I would go to maybe a Sephora or maybe a store that's specialized for that. That's why a custom GPT that is built on a data set specifically for solving that one challenge is more focused on providing you resources within that spectrum. And with that, as I said earlier, budget. Top quality AV, while integrating the latest AV production tools and AI technology, really depends on how well do you manage your budget. And every dollar that you spend really should maximize the impact and enhance the overall event experience without sacrificing on the quality or the innovation that goes into your event. And then with that comes careful resource management, showcasing the real value of having someone on your side, an AV partner that can guide you, that can advocate for you, that can give you solutions even within your constraints. And at the cost of repeating myself, I have to say smart budgeting is essential for delivering high-value AV production. So let's dissect that a little bit. You probably heard this, fast, good, cheap, pick two, which really underscores the need for strategic financial planning in many cases way before you're ready to ask for that initial AV proposal, AV quote. So next, I'd like to explore some core planning considerations, some strategic savings opportunities across various aspects of the event cycle, such as event objective, duration, venue selection, technical rehearsals, agenda management, showcasing how each one of those decisions can impact your bottom line while you can still deliver exceptional experiences, but you have to be aware of those things and savings opportunities for the benefit of making better informed decisions. So are we all ready for this? I'm gonna break into a song because in my mind, this is how this went. I was gonna start singing, baby, this is what you came for. Lightning strikes every time she talks, and everybody's watching her, and she's looking at you. So I wanted to turn this into a Taylor Swift concert. Thank you very much. This is harder without the actual song, okay? So probably when I listen back to this, I'm gonna be like, oh my God, you're so off tune. Get off the stage. All right, so let's get into the first one. Event objectives. When planning an event, I guess we all know this. The first and most crucial thing is to ask this question, why? Why is the event happening? What is the event aiming to achieve? Who is the event for, and what impact should it have on the participants, on the attendees? Before you get into the technical aspects of how you're going to execute the event production part of the event, you really want to have the answer to these questions, because that's what's going to dictate where you should allocate your resources. So just because you know you want AV or you know you're going to have an event doesn't mean that that's enough to have the right answers to those questions, which really will help you allocate the right revenue to the event production. Now, event duration, that also has a huge impact, because when you're planning an event, the duration and location can critically shape your strategy for budget. While many times it's done with a lot of good intentions, maybe to provide more content or to have more opportunities for attendees to engage, just a small decision to extend your event from like a 2.5 days to a 3 days can dramatically increase your cost, even by 25%, especially when it comes to AV. And we're not even talking about labor costs, we're not talking about overtime, or we're not even talking about maybe if this is weekends, it's gonna be even more, right? So that extension that is just half a day, we can really put you into a paying double for something that could have cost you less. Event location, now the same way how selecting your venue location plays an important role in managing your budget. A venue that's conveniently located to, say, in a metro area or in a place that's easy to transport gear, transport attendee, transport decor items, and anything like that can have financial advantages, which can include having savings on trucking, gear, transportation. And let me tell you, like just recently I had an event where our clients wanted to produce this beautiful event in a scenic location, which happened to be the 𝗖𝗵𝗽𝗀𝗀. Mountains. I'm from Idaho. So you can ask me afterwards, what did that mean from a logistical point of view, from a cost point of view to transport not just trucks of gears and equipment up to that location, but also attendees and making sure that they're not getting lost along the way and eaten by a bear or something, which is actually my biggest fear that would actually happen in real life. Venue selection, choosing the right venue for event also involves many times navigating other type of cost considerations such as union or non-union labor considerations. And somebody before me actually talked about union cost and giving a few strategies on how you can maneuver that. But really, many times if you're in a union venue, you will have to pay union-related cost, and that goes not just for, you know, rigging, lighting, sound, and general assistance, but even like we were in a situation where one of our clients, they paid over $16,000 in what we call them union babysitters. And that was over the course of 3 days. However, these individuals were required to just be there and oversee our highly skilled technical crew, even though they didn't do anything. They didn't contribute with anything to the event. They didn't help set up. They didn't lift a finger. And it was very frustrating for the client to know that they can't get out of it because it was already signed in the contract and they didn't do anything about it prior to that. Now, venue-related ancillary fees, that's another important one that, again, goes to the venue. Like many times you get an AV bill and then you're like, oh my gosh, why does it cost so much? Well, it would have been so much helpful if maybe you would have brought an AV partner to your first site visit. And that is something that I'm surprised that many event planners and managers don't really understand or take advantage of. You are able to bring your partner, to bring your helpful AV person, whomever that might be, to your site visit so they can really look into asking the right questions, looking for opportunities where some of the hidden fees might be, where are some of the costs that you're not even thinking that you might have to pay, and potential expenses that will add up. And this goes beyond just power and rigging and labor, union charges, as I mentioned, Wi-Fi, loading, loadout, dock availability, which all really adds up to the bigger picture. And going to rigging, I mean, in most venues, most likely you're going to pay extra for rigging. It's going to be very hard to negotiate out of because it all has to do to liability, complexity, and also safety requirements. Now, the ability to load in and out, especially on a busy dock, can also impact your schedule, especially if you are delayed, which causes you to go into overtime. And that has happened to us in San Francisco during a large tech conference where all the trucks were aligned and ready to go, but we were stopped because somebody else had priority. And that puts a lot of things, right? It's like a domino effect. Everything is going to get impacted from there. In addition to those costs, the choice between different ballroom sizes and configuration can also impact your budget. So think about it, like if you are in a ballroom and you have the opportunity to ground support everything so you don't have to pay for rigging, that's one way to sidestep the rigging charges, right? Now, obviously, it might not look as intimate. It might be a bigger ballroom because you have a lot of equipment you're gonna have to make room for, but that's something that could be a strategic move if for you budget is a concern or a consideration. Ultimately, at the end of the day, high value at its most basic elemental level really hinges on how clear is the sound, how bright are the projectors, how vibrant are the lights, and how cool maybe is the stage design. if budget is of concern, then keeping this in mind ensures that the event can still deliver an unforgettable experience without compromising on quality, on basic quality, while eliminating unforeseen financial strain. Now, agenda management, that's another big one, especially for a well-planned and run event. I think that is so key to keeping everything under control, but also to keeping the well-being of your attendees and of your staff in mind. The complexity of a schedule, especially with time-sensitive room flips and AV changes, can highly increase labor costs because either you have to run overtime or you have to bring in a completely different new crew to support for those changes. And timing those adjustments is crucial because you really want to make sure that you're paying attention to that. It's almost like choosing the right time to invest in stocks. Choosing weekdays for events can avoid weekend premium costs. But even then, remember, right, the AV time clock many times runs way longer than the event itself, because while the event might be, I don't know, 8 hours, your AV time clock will run anywhere from 14 to 18 hours days. So if you're adding that to a overtime, or if you're adding that to a weekend day, then you're already paying so much more than you could have done if this was a week event instead. And this is definitely a wild card, but if you are able to keep that open communication with your AV partner and carefully plan the timing of things and sessions and room flips, you are able to really have the impact that you're looking for long term, but also avoid some of the overtime charges that come with some of those considerations. Thoughtful agenda planning beyond just benefiting the budget, it also ensures enough breaks for your attendees to be able to receive, and not just receive, but also compute some of that information. I've been to enough conferences where there's one session after another, there's like no time for break. And if that impacts us as an attendee, how much more does it impact our staff and our behind the scenes people? So keeping that in mind, especially for the well-being of everyone that's involved, has a bigger benefit than just the money. And it really helps prevent situations where you have exhausted AV staff falling asleep at the table. And that has happened, and I've seen that before, which also goes against our desire to really promote a healthier and humane work environment. Now, technical rehearsals, how many of you believe that they're important? Good. Now, but there's still strategy where you can maximize how you are going to plan that strategically, especially for, say, an annual meeting or maybe a conference. For example, what we did here in this picture, we're holding a technical rehearsal for an annual meeting at the corporate headquarters. We had all the C-level executives do all their tech checks in a very comfortable environment, so they were able to be themselves. There's no anxiety about, being in front of strangers while they're going through their speeches, but also it took away from the time pressure that many times is involved with having to run a technical rehearsal right before your event, because you're like, the time starts now, so we gotta get this done. Another way in which we minimize cost here was we didn't need as many AV techs. We didn't need to have them on the clock forever. Many times on long conferences, what happens, you set up, you start, you're ready to go, and then it's what we call hurry up and wait. And then you're there for hours, and I'm like, we're there waiting to start, right? Which is time on the clock, because you're not gonna send anyone home just because you have a break of 4 hours. Now, multiply that by many breakout rooms or many times on a conference, how much money is wasted in just things like that. We did that. We didn't skip the technical rehearsal, which is never advisable. And we made sure that everybody that was part of it was comfortable. We ran through all the checks, and we didn't need an AV tax either to do all of that. Okay. Selecting the right visual elements is also key for budgeting and involves more than just choosing, say, screen sizes. You can, if you're, doing a smaller event and you still want to create an event that takes in consideration the visual strategy, maybe choosing 2 larger screens instead of 3 screens could really help you save money on extra projectors, converters, cables, setup time, while still delivering that cohesive visual experience. Choosing screen technologies such as LED screens, that really impacts an event, and it's a beautiful display because you have the ability to provide smart solutions, flexible ways in which you can have your content displayed. But with that also comes the idea that you have to evaluate the value of each element that you bring into your production against its cost, ensuring the event, again, is impactful and provides quality while also being financially sustainable. Choosing between, in-person, hybrid, online formats would also impact your budget, just because, as you all know, hybrid events will require multiple camera setups, maybe PTZs or manned cameras, additional technicians, directors. You're managing a broadcast versus a live event, which takes a completely different production workflow. So you have to keep that in mind. And then you have the platform, you have the streaming technology, all of those things add up. So it's a matter of like, yes, we still want to capture content. Does it have to be streamed? Yes, or maybe yes, maybe no. You should still capture content because that can really give you the opportunity to use that content evergreen to maybe market your event for next year and whatnot, or just keep the engagement 360 with your audience. A simpler streaming setup, actually, I have easily and effectively used with a lot of my clients, where we use remote teams, where we embed into the in-person AV production that's on the show floor, or it's whatever in person, and then we stream remotely, and we can do that either for the purpose of repurposing content, or maybe just recording content for future marketing. And from my experience, like, this is my home studio, I've done this so many times, and just yesterday I was doing this from my hotel room, directing an event with a remote team in a studio, just providing that support for the production virtually for a digital event that also had an in-person element. Now, I know that AV at events can be tricky, and especially when you have to decide between in-house or an outsourced AV provider. In-house AV can often mean that you have to navigate complex negotiations and jumping through the loops and managing costs amidst all the challenges that sometimes come with having to have a less trained staff or someone that has more of a basic understanding of AV, while also you're dealing with some aggressive venue sales tactics, high cost due to revenue sharing with the venue, and all of that can impact the experience, can also impact your stress levels and your budget in the end. Although in-house AV teams are generally well-rounded, and I've had great experience with in-house, I've also had some horrible experiences with in-house, they will most likely lack that specialized expertise that higher-end event production requires, which can lead to quite a few challenges. And many partners have difficulties, especially when it comes to navigating those in-house AV contract negotiations. And just because you signed the contract doesn't mean that your expectation of what you're going to receive is met. So that really highlighted the importance of understanding not just your events needs, but also knowing that you do have the ability to bring an outsourced AV vendor to support you through that process, through the negotiation. So that's where we had this amazing conversation during one of the think tanks, and it was a lot of event professionals and meeting planners. And what we did, we got together and we started to dissect, okay, so how do we navigate dealing with some of the contracts and some of the in-house constraints that many of us have to face. So that's where we came up with Planner's Bill of Rights. The conversation is still ongoing on my LinkedIn page. You're more than welcome to add to it because we actually want more people to add to it, to have more perspectives on it. But basically, this is what it says. You have the right to transparent pricing, so you demand clear upfront disclosure of all AV-related costs, including equipment and labor. You have the right to equipment and service quality assurance, ensuring access to detailed information about the AV equipment's quality and specifications. You have the right to prevent crew introductions. Meet the AV team in advance, say hi, and ensure that the same person that did your technical rehearsal is the person that's going to be there for the event. Then you have the right to contract negotiations. Negotiate and amend contract terms to better suit the event's needs without penalty. You have the right to use third-party AV providers, choosing third-party AV services if in-house services do not meet your event requirements without having to face restrictive fees. You have the right to detail floor plans. Obtain the floor plans that actually clearly label where all the internet jacks are, where the HDMI jacks are, where the power outlets are, how much ampage per each outlet, and that's where it goes also to the power charges. Like some venues will charge you per outlet, while other venues will charge you like as an overall fee for amps. You have the right to accurate floor plan capacities. So to ensure that your floor plan capacities account for space losses due to AV setups, recognizing that room capacity decreases when equipment is installed. And you have the right to a dedicated IT contact, especially if you're running a broadcast, to make sure that somebody is there to support you and is not the banquet manager that doesn't necessarily have much of an idea. All right, and with that, as I'm coming to a close because my time is almost up here, one last thought I wanted to share is that diversity in AV was actually the topic that I spoke on last year here at ETL. And I know that I might be biased here, but maybe choosing a smaller woman-owned or POC-owned AV production agency is the way to go because it offers a unique advantage since those agencies cannot afford not to provide you with excellent service. They don't have a whole list of events that are just going to come onto them from the BO. They have to give you good service. They're there to support you. So keep that in mind. We actually outfitted an entire Zoomtopia event breakout sessions. It was 20 breakout sessions with AV female leads. And I was so proud of that initiative because there's not a lot of us women in AV. And with that, my last thought here, the last takeaway, I guess, is high-value AV production hinges not just on all the fancy bells and whistles and the technical prowess, but really on the dedicated team behind the scenes that is going to go to end length to make sure that your event is successful. The core of a remarkable event lies in that diverse AV team that excels in their roles and is genuinely interested in your event success, guaranteeing both an unforgettable attendee experience and a smooth process for the entire planning team. And with that, I want to know how many of you found this at all useful? How many of you thought that maybe I could have gone into it in more detail? How many of you think that maybe I should do a longer talk that goes into more detail? If you could leave me some feedback, I will so appreciate it because it really helps me enhance the talk, touch more on your pain points, talk about the solutions that will help your events. But I don't know that if I don't hear from you because I don't know your problems. I know my own problems, so I'll speak to those. So if you take a moment to do that, I will really, really appreciate that. And while you do that, in closing, and the QR code is still up there, I wanted to share my last thought. And that is basically just recapping what we talked about. Strategically managing resources is key to high-value event production. By carefully balancing your budget, your venue costs, your labor, scheduling. You prevent the unexpected expenses that come with oversight. And you are able to achieve the high value, cost effective AV production outcomes that you deserve. This balance really requires understanding that there's some trade-offs that you're going to have to make. And choosing an AV partner that will support you, will advocate for you, is essential, as their guidance and expertise is really going to help ensure that every step of the way of the process, every element of the AV setup is enhanced, turning those ordinary gatherings into something that is really memorable and impactful for your audience, which really showcases the true value of expert AV production. The ideal AV partner will integrate with your team, will educate, will be there for you, will ensure a well-executed event that aligns with your goals and allows for creative budget considerations to achieve that next level high-value AV production. And with that, thank you so much for allowing me to talk about the first pillar of our Fit for Events framework, which really amplifies your events impact through strategic AV production, cutting-edge AI technology, thoughtful planning for your audience so that they are thriving and they're engaged, and also empowering the behind-the-scenes teams. And if you want to connect with me, that's the same QR code on the screen, which links you to all the socials. Check out my blog. I have a lot of resources on the blog, which are free. A lot of AI workshops on LinkedIn and YouTube, which are free. All of that because I'm all about education and providing you with resources so you can plan better events. Your peace of mind is really my priority, so thank you. If you have questions, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Thank you.